feelings changed. Perhaps it was only a mistake. But when the headaches started, Ambrose suspected me of terrible things. I can't speak about that time. Please, leave me alone, Philip. I can't answer any more questions. I have reasons for my questions, I said. You will understand in 3 weeks' time. By the following morning, I had made up my mind. I rode into the town and, with the help of a lawyer, wrote out a document. In 3 weeks' time, all my property would be given to Mrs. Rachel Ashley. The jewels would belong to her too, but she would not be able to sell the house or the land.
I have one question, the lawyer said. Mrs. Ashley is quite a young woman. What will happen to the property if she marries again?
I thought for a moment. The house and the estate must always belong to the Ashleys. If she marries, I said, or if she dies, the property becomes mine again. That must be made clear. I told the lawyer that the document must be kept secret. He promised to send me a copy on the last day of March. I felt very happy as I rode home. My dear Rachel would never leave me now. We would live in perfect happiness forever. When I reached the house, I heard voices in the library. The door opened and Rachel came out, laughing happily. "Come and see my visitor, Philip," she cried. "He has come a long way to see us both." The man stood up and held out his hand. It was Rinaldi. We stood there, looking at each other. Then Rinaldi began talking about his journey. Rachel suggested that he should stay in the house for a few days. I could say nothing. During dinner, Rachel and Rinaldi talked about people and places I knew nothing about. Often they spoke in Italian, and I could not understand a word. At last, Rachel stood up and said, "You must excuse us, Philip. Rinaldi and I have some business to discuss. He has brought papers I must sign." They went upstairs, and I walked alone in the gardens. I felt cold and unhappy. I stayed outside until the light went out in Rinaldi's room. I had just reached my own room when there was a quiet knock on my door. "I came to wish you good night," my cousin Rachel said. "Why didn't you come and drink tisana with us, Philip? You must make Rinaldi welcome. He is a very old friend of mine." Rinaldi stayed with us for 7 days. As he laughed and talked with Rachel, I began to hate him. When it was time for Rinaldi to leave, he took my cousin Rachel's hand and kissed it. "Write and tell me your plans," he said. "I shall be in London for some time." "I am making no plans until after the 1st of April," Rachel replied with a laugh. Rinaldi smiled. "I hope Philip enjoys his birthday," he said. "The 1st of April is All Fool's Day, isn't it? But perhaps Philip doesn't want to remember that." When Rinaldi had gone, Rachel smiled at me. "You have been very good, Philip," she said. "Are you glad we are alone again?" Chapter 12. All Fool's Day. As my birthday came nearer, I became more and more excited. Rachel laughed at me. "You are like a child," she said. "What plans are you making for the day?" But I had made no plans. All I wanted was that Rachel should know about the document. And, one more thing, Rachel should have all the family jewels. I went to the bank myself. I brought them back to the house and hid them in my room. On the last day of March, I rode over to Nick Kendall. First, I handed him a copy of Ambrose's will. My godfather looked at it carefully.
"I don't understand why Ambrose didn't sign it," he said. "But we have done all we can for Mrs. Ashley."
"I don't agree," I said. "I want to make everything right." And I handed him a copy of the document the lawyer had prepared. "Read this," I said, "and remember that my cousin Rachel knows nothing about it."
"I wish Signor Rinaldi had seen this," Nick Kendall said slowly. "He told me how careless Mrs. Ashley is with money. This document of yours gives her great power over the property. I have to ask you one question, Philip. Are you in love with Mrs. Ashley?"
My face went red. "I am only doing what Ambrose wanted," I said.
"Perhaps," Nick Kendall answered. "But people are talking. Mrs. Ashley should leave, get married again. She might marry you if you asked her."
"I'm sure she would not," I said. Nick Kendall watched me sadly as I signed my name on the document.
"There are some women who bring sadness to all those who love them," he said. "They cannot help it. I think Mrs. Ashley is one of those women."
The sun was setting as I rode home. I bathed, changed my clothes, and went into the dining room. Rachel wanted to know where I had been, but I laughed and told her nothing. After dinner, I was too excited to sit still. I walked down to the sea. There was a moon, and the night was warm. I took off my clothes, and for a few minutes I swam in the ice-cold water. When I got back to the house, it was 5 minutes to 12. I could not wait any longer. I stood under Rachel's window and called her name. When she looked out, I said, "I have something for you, Rachel." Then I ran to my room for the jewels. "I want you to have these now," I said. "Listen, the clock is striking 12, and it is the 1st of April. I am 25, and I can do what I like." I put the document on her table and began to open the boxes of jewels. Rachel's eyes opened wide in surprise, and suddenly we were laughing together. I put the pearl collar round her neck. As I looked at her, I remembered the other Ashley women who had worn it. "You have given me so much," Rachel said at last. "I have only a small present for you. What else can I give you? Tell me." "There is one thing," I said. I looked into her dark eyes. They shone very brightly in the candlelight. She laughed softly and blew out the candle. We were alone in the darkness. I did not leave her room until sunrise. Happiness had come to me at last. Rachel accepted me and my love. She was the first woman I ever loved, and she was the last. I remember walking alone in the garden as the birds began to sing. Rachel and I would be always together now, day after day, night after night, for all our lives. I went back to my room and slept. After breakfast, I went into the garden again. I picked the most beautiful flowers I could find. Rachel was in bed eating her breakfast. I threw the flowers on the bed in front of her. "Good morning again," I said. "I have come to say one thing. I love you." Rachel looked up at me without smiling. "You should not come into my room so early," she said. "The servants will talk." I smiled, but said nothing. I went downstairs. I wanted to tell the servants that Rachel and I were going to be married. Then I decided that we would tell them together, later. I walked in the gardens until it was time for Rachel to leave her room. The day was fine, and I decided we should go out riding. But when I got back to the house, Rachel had already left. I waited for a long time, but she did not return. At last, I walked along the road, hoping to meet her. When I saw the carriage, I stopped it. I got in and sat down beside Rachel.